Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Here from the land known as Canada, Treaty 6 territory, where I am today, and just going to do some introductions before this amazing, legendary panel starts. Just to let you all know that Landspeak is presented by the Ireland-Canada University Foundation in partnership with the Centre for Creative Writing and Oral Culture at the University of Manitoba, the Centre for Canadian Studies at the University College of Dublin, and by the Craig Dobbin Visiting Professor at the University College of Dublin. So we welcome you all, and we're so happy that you've joined us for this conference, for all these amazing sessions. And we wanted to let you know that these events are free, but if you know anybody who's got money and who would love to support this work that we're doing, I think you'll notice that there's a little link at the top of the hop-in chat, and we welcome you to let anyone you know who can would love to donate to gatherings such as this and this one. That would be wonderful. Before we start this this poetry reading that I'm so honored to be moderating with two of our Latin best poets, I want to personally acknowledge the organizers of this event. It's been really exciting to be part of all of the conversations that we've had to bring this to fruition. James Kelly, he's the CEO of Ireland-Canada University Foundation. He's also a documentary filmmaker and many other things in Ireland. Brenda Ron Jordan is a graduate of University of Waterloo and UCD. She's an executive in the film industry, and she's a board member of the Ireland-Canada University Foundation. Paul Hafferty, he's a theatre historian and performance studies scholar who's the assistant professor and head of drama studies at the University College of Dublin. He's also serves as the director for the Centre for Canadian Studies, and he's a board member of Ireland-Canada University Fund. Renee Hulen, who's a Canadian scholar, researcher, and author, who is the 2020-2021 Craig Dobbin Visiting Professor in Canadian Studies at the University College Dublin. Warren Callio, professor and director of the Centre for Creative Writing and Oral Cultures at the University of Manitoba, who's devoted much of his career to storytelling traditions. And our amazing Amanda Hopkins, who is program manager of Ireland-Canada University Fund, who does so much more. So, and also just quickly, can you raise your cup of tea or whatever you're drinking right now to our amazing technicians who worked so hard over the past few days, Kevin, Michael Reed, and Josh Roxby. So it's been an amazing journey, and this is, for me, a huge honor to introduce our two poets. Louise Bernice Halfe Skydancer was raised on Saddle Lake Reserve and attended Blue Quills Residential School. He's married and has 2 adult children and 3 grandsons. She graduated with a Bachelor of Social Work from the University of Regina, and she served as Saskatchewan's Poet Laureate for 2 years. She travels extensively, and she's been a keynote speaker at many, many conferences. She's received many numerous accolades and awards for her poems and for her poetry books. And she's elder and consultant for various committees and departments at the University of Saskatchewan and other provinces. And recently she was awarded the Poet Laureate of Parliament for the Government of Canada. So I'm so looking forward to all of the poems Louise is going to be creating in that role as well. And we're also joined by Gregory Scofield, who's a Red River Métis of Cree, Scottish, and European descent, whose ancestry can be traced back to the fur trade and to the Métis community of Kinosita. I hope I said that right, Gregory, Manitoba. He's taught creative writing and First Nations and Métis literature at several universities, and he now teaches in the Department of Creative Writing at the University of Victoria. He's published 9 books of poetry and 1 memoir named Thunder Through My Veins, and he's working on a 2nd memoir. He's received many awards, most recently the Latner Writers Trust Poetry Prize and the Order of Gabriel Dumont Silver Medal. He's also a skilled beadworker, and he creates in the medium of traditional Métis arts. So with that, I want to welcome these two esteemed Nehioiwin Ixque speakers and writers. My Cree is so bad, but I hope you'll just bear with me to use my words. And with that, maybe I'll ask Louise if you can start us off, and we're going to just try and have a nice organic flow between these two amazing poets.
Hi. Thank you very much, Cheryl. People need to know that Cheryl was recently awarded the Governor's General Award as well. Big honor in this country. Hi. Thank you.
Yeah.
And as usual, lovely to see my little brother, Gregory. I love working with all of you. Thank you so much for having me on air. I'm going to start with two, I'll start off with two poems. How's that, Gregory? From Bare Bones and Feathers. Yeah. Okay. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, the Pope said. I thought you were just gathering to lift your legs, thump your chest around the tree of old men. I didn't know the rock and twig you smoked, blueberries and sweetgrass were your offerings. I wouldn't have taken your babies and fed them wafers and wine. I'm so sorry. I just thought we could borrow land for a little to plant our seeds, raise sheep and build churches, schools. I really didn't know how you survived for centuries on buffalo and teepees praying in medicine wheels. I'm so sorry. I should have told the settlers to quit their scalping, selling hair at 2 bits for each Indian. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Maybe I could build healing churches, chapels full of sweetgrass and drums, chase the spirits out and fill our sweat lodges full of armed angels. 10 Hail Marys. The Pope said, too bad that man of sea, kelp and rancid pig and starving teeth came on your land. I'm so sorry. He ate so much buffalo meat, gave you beads and trinkets for beaver, coyote, and mink. He didn't mean to sleep with your woman, make them cry and send your children to purgatory in England too. I'm so sorry, the Pope said. I'll write to the priests and nuns, make them say, I'm sorry too for suffering little children coming to me in that red brick schools. I'll tell other people too, I'm sorry. I promise to fold my hands and keep you in my prayers. Hi.
Sin. So I guess that I'm seeing myself double here. So Tanse, everyone. It's such an honor to be here this afternoon and to be presenting, of course, with Louise. I just saw Louise not too long ago, so it's wonderful. It's actually been a while since we've read together, so it's really exciting to read together again, Louise. And Cheryl, wonderful to see you. It's been ages since I've seen you, so it's wonderful. And to everybody out there listening, I guess watching, welcome. Thank you for tuning into our session today. Thank you for coming and listening to our poetry. And I've been thinking, of course, a lot about this panel and the idea of landscapes and, of course, the idea of language. So I think what I'm going to do is I want to start off with one poem that speaks about language, and it speaks about landscape, and I'd like to share this piece. It's called "I'll Teach You Cree." I'll teach you Cree with the tip of my spring tongue. Ayiki, your mouth will be the web catching apikishis words, a crawling out ceremony that cannot be translated. How pikishkui. I'll teach you Cree, Nihiawiwin, that is the taste of Bimi Gwasashkutumana. Your mouth will be the branches I am picking clean, a summer heat ceremony that cannot be translated. How Pikisqui. I'll teach you Cree in the winter, Pipun, when the dogs curl against our backs. Your mouth will be Bawachakana Sispisim, that cannot be translated. It will be a ceremony. How Pikisqui. I'll teach you Cree, Ikok Mistay Sagitan. It will be in the fall, this ceremony. You will have the mouth of a beaver, thick and luminescent. I will make my camp there. Ikok Mistay Sagitan. This cannot be translated. How Pikisqui. So I'm starting off with that poem, just putting language out there, putting our landscapes out there, and there. So Cheryl, I don't know if you have any questions for us, or.
Well, I think so far what you brought up is, of course, Louise, you brought up the Pope, and we're broadcasting here to a country, a republic that is a Catholic republic. And in the last session, we heard Nuala talking about the new ceremonies that are starting to be created, outside of the Catholic Church, returning to roots, I suppose. And Gregory, I mean, really, the power of speaksway, the power of speaking being a ceremony in itself. So I think that's. I don't have a question, but that's my observation. This is a very beautiful start. This notion. So I don't know if Louise, if you have inspired to move on from there, or if you have some comments. Hey,
Well, just to keep it going with the poetry here, this one is from Blue Marrow. Possession took me last night. I slept with a bone, the jawbone of elk lined with pearly teeth. I bathed her in sweetgrass, laid her under my pillow. Winds swept through me. This path has chosen me. This chosen walk is a blizzard whiteout. My creeing alone in this heavy arm of snow. I hang on to this bone dressed in satin, into red berry lakes. I am married to her garden of carrots, sweet corn heads. I lay her skull broken east, face them to the east. When Newcomb's granddaughter slept on top of graves, I thought she was crazy. All night I danced above her head. She dragged a string of skulls heavy in torrent rains, creeing loud into my night. I sleep with rocks too. I couldn't say this before. Who could I say it to except Newcomb's granddaughter? The rocks fill me, their stories, slate in dreams, heavy in my stomach, move like thick clouds blown by my labored breathing. I cannot catch them. I don't think to ask them to slow down. I sleep with petrified wood too, frozen snails, snake with amber eyes, crystallized tails. Soon the black robes will burn me, stake me to their cross. I won't have to live in White House much longer.
Beautiful.
Hey. And your response?
Sorry?
I said, and your response?
Oh, I was just thinking. I was just kind of going back through my memories, and I was remembering because Louise and I started writing around the same time. Too, Louise, I think we started writing around the same time.
Yeah.
And I remember because in Canada at the time there didn't seem to be a lot of Nihil poets. There didn't seem to be a lot of poets that were writing in Cree. So of course, when I came across Louise's work, I think it was Bare Bones and Feathers, your very first book, Louise. I remember getting a copy of the book, and I remember sitting down with the book, and I remember reading the poems, and it was just like having a cup of tea with a relative. It was so amazing. I thought, yes, this is the poetry of who we are. This is the poetry. This is the language of who we are. This is the landscape of who we are. And so it's always been amazing. I mean, all these years later, it's like every time I end up reading your poems, whether they're the old poems or whether the new poems, it's always a fresh pot of tea, and it's always that opportunity to sit down, and it's like visiting relatives. You know, I mean, not only poetry and the stories that are so much a part of the work that we do. But of course, the language and the sounds of the language, and of course, the things, you know, as I was saying in the poem that I read, the things that can't be translated into English. There's a whole world in some of our words that can't be translated. And there's a ceremony. I mean, I know with Louise, with your work, that you know, and I've always very much related to this, is this this sense of ceremony in the work, and how important that ceremony is, especially with poetry and with language. I you know, keeping in you know, keeping with the idea of landscape and language, Louise was reading from Blue Marrow, and I'm reading a couple of poems from a book called Kipochigan, and this is a book. This was Poems New and Selected, and in keeping with the with the theme of our reading today, with landscape, with language. I write a lot about landscape, and of course I use a lot of language in my work, and a lot of the work that I've always found myself doing, whether that's in poetry or whether it's in prose, is so much of that work is about connecting with ancestors. So much of that work is about honoring those ancestors and finding the language to honor them. This is the poem that I want to share with you next is a poem that has always been really very very important to me. And I normally don't read I don't normally read kind of the prologue of this poem, but I realized that there's a lot of Nihiawe and there's a lot of Cree in this poem, and I don't want to stop and kind of translate it for you, but I'd like to give you a bit of a backstory about what this poem is about. So I normally don't read the prologue of this poem, but kind of in this virtual world, I'll share this with you. So this poem that I want to share with you today is called Prayer Song for the Returning of Names and Sons, and this was from a book called Singing Home the Bones. And this poem, I'm just going to read you the prologue here. So, my Japanak, so these are my ancestor grandmothers. So my Japanak of 5 generations past and my mothers of long ago came to find me while I was researching my maternal genealogy. The meticulous records that the Hudson's Bay Company kept on their employees, now available in their archives, serves as an invaluable source of information for many Métis and half-breed people, especially those who originate from Western Canada. My grandfathers of that era, many of whom came from the Orkneys in London, arrived in Canada in the mid to late 1700s. Some of them, such as James Peter Whitford, landed at York Factory, one of the company's principal posts. Records state his full name, the parish he belonged to in London, the date he entered service, his various appointments and positions, the dates of his postings, and his death on May 5th, 1818, at Red River Settlement. Below this information it simply states, wife, Sarah, an Indian woman, married pre-1795 at Severn, buried 27 April 1845, 70 years old at Upper Church. I'm certain my Japan, my ancestor grandmother Sarah, my kaya sohti negawi, my long ago mother, who eventually gave birth to 8 children, came to my ancestor grandfather carrying a name too sacred for him to pronounce. During my research, I began to talk to her in a language that caused her bones to shift beneath the earth. I asked her to help me, her little Japanese, her little ancestor, to find and sing the proper names, even though the old names are forever lost. The woman of my blood, my other Tsapanak, came to listen. I was grateful to have made this connection, to be a part of a ceremony that cannot be recorded. And I'd like to share the poem with you. Prayer song for the returning of names and sons. Aho, Tsapanak, Charlotte, Sarah, Mary, Egwa Christiana, aho, Kaya, Sotsi, Negawimak, Nahtuta, my song, Nigamoen, how, the song I am singing to give you back the polished swan bones, the sewing awl, the birch bark bundle holding the whetstone, the drawing stone, the pounding choke cherry stone, how, the spirit of your Esquio names, the ones not birthed from the belly of their ships, not taken from their Mantoy Masanahigan. Oh, their great naming book. In Tsapanak, Charlotte, Sarah, Mary, Egwa Christ e Anna. These are the names I have thrown back across the water. I have given back to their God, who has 2 hearts, 2 tongues to speak with. Ho, Natuta, my song, Nikamuin, the renaming song I am singing 5 generations later. Natuta, my prayer song, so you will be called, sung as, tattooed from the lip to the chin woman. Hey, hey. Kiwa, Charlotte, Sarah, Mary, Egwa Christiana, Namoy kahkya munya skowak, how Tsapanak, Kaya so tsinigawimak, Natuta, my song, Nigamuin, this prayer song I am singing, hey, hey.
Wow, beautiful. And that's
Thank
something,
you.
there's something about what you're both doing. It reminds me, I read a long time ago a book by a British guy, Robert Graves, and he talked about the role of poets, Gaias, over there in the British Isles. And he said that it was even between battles, between 2 parties, that the poets would go on the hill and the poets would eloquently tell each other, orate to each other what was really happening in the battle so that they could go home before the soldiers made their way home to tell the people, what the battle was. And I feel like there's something really so profound in what both of you do, in the way that you weave, whether it be the sort of images of Bauachtan, the dream world, and that sort of visceral connection that we have with the land, in the poem that you just read, Louise, and then in Gregory, this notion of interweaving these Cree words into the fabric of what you're presenting, that becomes what holds it together, and gives it this sort of strength and this character, So I wonder if you want to speak about that, or if you have another poem that you'd like to share with us that sort of continues this beautiful articulation of the mastery that you both have with two languages and maybe three, the language of gesture or intonation. Louise, you give another point?
Just that was so beautiful. You know, when it's so interesting for us poets. We go back to the land of bones and memory, and our great grandparents, and how they've influenced us through our own DNA and into our marrow. It's really a wonder that they come in and be our source of voice. And I'm so grateful for that. And yeah, for sure, like Gregory, you touch on that. Was your that's good that Banawa Gimosum, your great grandfather or great grandfather, was his last name Whitford?
Yeah. Yep. They were Whitfords.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Then we're probably related because I have a lot of Whitford relatives in Saddle Lake.
Yeah. Yeah.
You couldn't get away with it.
Yeah, no, we're definitely related, Louise, somewhere along the line because I think it was my great uncle Andrew Whitford or Charles Whitford started a Métis settlement right beside Saddle Lake, and it was a Métis
Yeah.
community. And a lot of those Whitfords, when the treaty makers came, a lot of those Whitfords ended up getting treaty in Saddle Lake. So we're definitely related somewhere along the way.
Yeah, we do have an Andrew Whitford relative from. I don't know what's happened to him, but yeah, for sure. Well, you know, in Indian country, you always ask a person, "Who are your parents?"
Yeah. How are we related?
I can't sleep with you. Anyway, here's another poem from the Crooked Good, beautiful. But all these books, my publisher went down last year, and they went bankrupt. So all these books are being reprinted by Brick Books and or Kegano Press in Ontario. So they all will have different covers, but they're doing a beautiful job. So I'm going to read with you this one from the Crooked Good. Igweskit, which means turn around. Igweskit, turn around woman. When I was growing up in the bush on the hillside, I watched the sun arrive from the dark, watched her slip into the dark. I traveled. I didn't know the world back then. I just traveled. I was afraid I would never return. I tumbled that hillside back into myself. You can tell me after you hear this story if my name suits me. I've yet to figure it out. In Rib Woman, stories are born. The old man called it psychology. Me, I just dream it. These gifted, mysterious people of long ago. Kaya seki batausitsik inuwak. My mother, gone for good, would say, they never died. They just scattered here, there, everywhere, somewhere. They know the language, the sleep, the dream, the laws, these singers, these healers. At the Yuganak, these ancient story keepers. I, turn around, am not one of them. I was taught by old people, an Indian man, a white man, an Indian woman, a white woman. They worked in veins. They worked in layers in the full veins of Rib Woman. I sat near thicket, wailing. The old ones navigated through my dreams. Sometimes they dragged, scolded, cajoled, cheered, and celebrated. I wanted to be with them, like them. I am not a saint. I am a crooked good. My cousin said I was easy, therefore I've never been a maiden. I am 70, but still I carry my sins. Brothers-in-law I meet for the first time wipe their hands as if I'm still among the maggots. I didn't know their women wept when their men slept in my bed. I am not a saint. I married Abel, a white, green-eyed man, 50 years now. Inside Rib Woman, I shook hands with Promise. Promise never forgot, trailed me year after year. His big heavens, a morning lake, draws me into my lair. I learned to build Rib Woman, one willow at a time, one skin at a time. I am only half done. This is part of the story. I, Egwiski, am a dreamer. I dream awake, asleep, on paper. The old man said the universe, the day was the story. So every day I am born. The old white man taught me to unfold night visits. The old woman taught me all of it was real. The old white woman helped me to cry with the thunder.
Done it. Gregory, I need to hear from
Lovely,
you.
beautiful. Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Again, it's just talking about the idea of story in poetry, and that I think that people often forget about the stories that are interwoven throughout poetry, and how for a lot of Indigenous poets, are using poetry to tell stories. And I think that we've always used poetry to tell stories, not only, our songs, but of course, our stories. It's if you listen to, to Cree speakers, and you listen to people telling, the old time stories, or the Tayogan, the sacred stories, it's like there's so much poetry in those stories. So thinking about stories, I'm going to kind of switch gears here a little bit, and I did pick a few poems that I wanted to read today, and then I just thought that I would, because this is kind of an organic process, I just thought that I would, kind of see what was happening with our panel today, and just kind of play it by ear. So of course I'm thinking about stories, and there's a story I want to share with you, and this is actually one of my this is probably one of my favorite stories, and if there's probably two poems in my 30-year career of writing that I've ever memorized, and this is one of them. I'm not going to try to attempt it here because, of course, I'll get nervous and I'll forget it. Again, this is from Kipochigan, the new and selected, and the poem kind of story that I want to share with you is from a book called I Knew Two Métis Women, and this was a book, or this is a book that really is about my late mom Dorothy Scofield and my late auntie Georgina Houle Young, and I was very fortunate growing up with my late adopted auntie Georgina Houle Young. And it was really through my auntie that I learned Cree, that I learned storytelling, and of course learned beadwork. I was so fortunate growing up at her kitchen table and listening to stories, because of course, as she was, after supper and all the dishes, had been cleared away, she would, make a pot of fresh tea. She would pull out her beads. She might be, working on a pair of moccasins or something. She did a lot of commission work, and she would start sewing. And then, of course, she would start telling stories. And of course, stories, were being told in both English and Cree. So not only was I learning to do beadwork, but I was also learning Nihiawi, when I was also learning Cree. And at the same time, I was learning, I was really actually being given the spirit of storytelling. So in that vein, I'm going to kind of switch gears here a little bit, and I want to share a story poem with you. And this is a piece that Louise, I know that that you also write in dialect, especially the dialect of our the old people speakers, in the way that they speak the way that they speak English. My auntie was no different, and so this story, this poem, is actually told in her voice. And just kind of a quick background with this is that when I started. When I started writing this poem in, when would it have been, 1997, 1998, I remember starting this poem and writing it in kind of my dialogue, and I got about a quarter of the way through the poem, and I read it back, and I thought, no, like, this just, it's not the story. It's not the story that she told me. Of course, I grew up hearing these stories many, many different times, and I want to share this one story with all of you today. I hope you guys get a little bit of a chuckle out there. It's called "Oh, That Agnes." Wah, wah. Auntie would roar between chipped teeth and slap her legs so the dogs jumped and barked. You know, she told me, her father was a Swede, but boy, could she ever speak good Cree. One time we had to clean the chapel, and I says to her, "Hey, Agnes, I wonder what the father's always drinking." "I don't know," she says, shrugging her shoulders like this. "Well, it must be good," I says, "'cause he's always drinking it. Maybe we should try some, huh?" "Oh, my Georgie," she says, making a fat cuckoo's face. This is good." "Wow, machamanto," I says to her, and grabbed that chug of wine. Well, the next thing you know, we forgot all about the chapel. Then that crazy thing started singing. Boy, oh boy, she sounded like a goddamn cat howling at the moon. Well, we finished off that jug and started on the next one. "Hey, what about this song?" I says. "I don't care what they say, all the muñas que say." Wow, that Agnes was laughing so hard she farted and falled over. Holy cripe, next thing you know, that Sister Dennis came charging up to the altar and says, "Hey, you girls, what's going on in here?" And that was that. Boy, did we ever catch hell. Her dad laughed about it, though. Told everyone we got drunk on Christ's blood. Wah, kwa machamantoak, she chuckled, lighting another cigarette. And there was the time we... Thank you.
That was so great.
It's perfect. You know, the thing about this whole gathering, this is perfect that you're introducing a story like this and making us all laugh and have a good chuckle, because what's been organically happening as this whole conference has been going along is that I think at first it started out quite formal, but in the background, the little backstage that we had, we talk normally with each other. And as every day has been going on, that's been more bleeding into the actual sessions. And I think that's why I was really happy the two of you were going to be together, because I know that that's what you do normally. So I think you brought what we've all been, manifesting and doing anyway, and maybe what this whole software tries to do. You just did it. You just brought us into a kitchen table and shared. That's a good story. Hi, something.
Well, I thought I would up the ante, Louise. I thought I would up it just to see what you come up with next.
Well, I hate to say this, but
Louise has some farting poems.
I'll save those for last. Okay. I'd like to, just go back briefly to Birding in This Midnight Dream, which was the last book before Oasis. I want to save Oasis for a good laugh after. So, but just because we've been talking about some of the church and some of that, the dynamics around that. One of the things that I've witnessed on back home was, it doesn't even have to be back home. It's happening in this community is lateral violence. Okay, and sometimes, like myself, we're in a world that we learn that lateral violence, picking on each other, and the crab in the bucket and kind of thing. And I was quite distressed when one of our community elders shared with us his idea of those of us who are married to white men or white women, and how we don't have the privilege of our ancestry and our children can't go to heaven. We're all condemned. And so I had a real problem with that. And I thought we have to talk about and address lateral violence. So I'll do this quick poem from Birding in This Midnight Dream. And then after we do the other, I'll shift back to something funny. I'd love to leave it like that. So this one is called Uspagan, the pipe.
Uspagan.
Yeah. He sat between the women, told a story of how the ancient elders taught white men and their native brides that their half-blood children had no right to the pipe, to the ceremonies. How this teaching applied to this present day. When these people, he prophesied, took their last breath, they would remain as wandering ghosts, disturbing the present peace of their lost land. When the women spoke of their ancient grandmothers, spoke of being outcasts, and how this applied to this present age, they spoke of their love of their mixed blood children, the love they shared with their men. The condemnation that walked from this man's tongue cut their bloodline and spilled it. They arose and left him with his bitterness and hate, returned to their families. Yeah. That's difficult for me to swallow. I think who is this guy to condemn all these beautiful people? Anyway, that's some of our dysfunction from inheritance, I guess. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to say one thing I love about the ability that the poets like the both of you have is that you have no fear, and you're so willing to commit to the page, those observations that you have in our communities and those observations that you have with the dominant society, and it's like you're warriors, it's like that's. And there's that word. What's that word that I've heard Sylvia McAdam use during the Idle No More? She used that word, and it was sort of it can't be translated. And I think, Greg, that's what you're doing as well by saying that these words can't pale in comparison to English, But the word she used was for the person who was the provider in the community, and soldier doesn't work, or warrior doesn't work, but there's that word, and when we hear it, we know what it is, but it can't be translated. So I love you both for what you do for the words and the bravery with your tongues. It's going to have something great. Yeah.
Hi.
I'll maybe read one more poem from I Knew Two Métis Women, and this is a special poem, and when just to give you a little bit of history, when I was working on I Knew Two Métis Women, when I was working on that book in 1997, 1998, I had lost my mom in 1993, and in 1997 I lost my auntie. So I lost kind of these two most, incredibly important people in my life. And, really it was through my mom that I developed a love of reading. My mom was very, very well read, and she was this great kind of philosopher. And so, she always really fostered reading with me, and wanting to learn, and it was really important to her that I was educated on really significant things in history, that I knew not only about kind of Indigenous history, but that I was aware of the history of slavery. I was aware of the Holocaust in Europe. I was aware of all of these really significant events. So of course, through my mom, I really developed this hunger for reading, and this hunger for learning. Of course, through my auntie, as I was saying a little bit earlier, this wonderful sense of language, the Cree language, Nihioyo, and stories. It's like oral stories, and the importance of those oral stories. So really, it was I was getting book stories from my mom, and I was getting oral stories from my auntie. So, of course, when they both passed away, again, my auntie in 1997, my mom in 1993, I was really, of course, going through this whole process of grieving. And for me, I had always approached, and I still very much do, approach writing, as a sacred place, as a ceremony. And I knew to Métis women, the book was really, it wasn't meant to be a published book. It was really, they were poems. They were me writing down my memories, because I was afraid I would forget them. And subsequently, all of those memories ended up becoming the poems in New to Métis Women. So this is one of those pieces that I'd like to share with you. It's called "I've Been Told." And interesting, because Louise, you were talking about Ospuagan. You had just finished reading your poem about the pipe, and about that elder, and what he was saying about Apitogoshanak, like about mixed blood people, and this idea about heaven. So this is an interesting poem. It's called "I've Been Told." I've been told half-breed heaven must be handmade flowers of tissue, poplar trees forever in bloom, the north and south Saskatchewan rivers swirling and meeting like the skirts the hands of cloggers shuffling their moccasin feet. I've been told half-breed heaven must be old Gabriel at the gate calling, "Tawao, Tawao," toasting new arrivals, pointing deportees to the Buffalo Jump or down the Great Canadian Railroad like Selkirk or McDonald. I've been told half-breed heaven must be scuffed floors and furniture pushed to one side, grannies giggling in the kitchen, their embroidered hankies, teasing and nudging the sweetest sweet 16, who will snare the eye of the best jigger. I've been told half-breed heaven must be a wedding party stretched to the new year, into a wake, a funeral, then another wedding, an endless brigade of happy faces and squeaky-wheeled carts loaded with accordions, guitars, and fiddles. I've been told half-breed heaven must be a restover for the greats, Hank Williams, Kitty Wells, the Carter family, and Hank Snow. It must be because I've been told so, because I know two Métis women who sing beyond the blue.
So much about singing in these poems. One thing I wanted to share is that I've been studying with a couple of different Cree teachers. One of them is Jerry Saddleback from Musqueam, and the other one is Leo Yayaki quote from Beardy's. And just even in the small sounds, the small sounds you make, whether the two of you do it in English or in Cree, you still have those sounds there, and those sounds are so spirited, there's so much spirit that lives in each one of those tiny little sounds that you articulate. And as other people have said in previous sessions, that even, and Kevin Lee Burton shared earlier, that even, when you're speaking in Cree, you're still singing, So with that, I think we have enough time, Louise, if you want to take us out with a good housing Kamche Kusto.
Okay, one fast one. This is my new book, Awasa's Kinky and Disheveled, just came out. And Gregory's at the back of it. But Awasa's actually means, some people think it just means, but it actually means more than that. It means a spirit we've been loaned to. And this is about the adult child within. So I'll just read this quickly. It's called Tenting. Awasa snuggled with little white men in the darkness of their tent. She was horny. So she laddered her emigwan, her drinking spoon. Little white man had a sniff and asked why the oil had a funny smell. When Awasis brought it up to her nose, she discovered it was clear cedar shampoo. Little white man laughed and laughed, said he would have come up blowing bubbles. Ay, kinaskumtin Sherilyn, kinaskumtin Gregory, kinaskumtin Ay.
Yeah. Kinaskumtan o
I'm so good. This has been the best time of my life, and I've been taking furious notes, and I hope everyone who's listening, you've been taking furious notes as well. And we haven't had any questions, which means everyone has just been listening very, very intently. I think it's a good sign. So kinanas kong tanawaw, and we'll see you both again, my friends, when this pandemic's all over.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you.
Okay.